Hi, I'm Jim Knotts, President and CEO of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund. Welcome to today's virtual reading of the names. 2022 marks the 40th anniversary of the dedication of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. As part of our commemoration, we'll host an in-person reading of the names at the wall from November 7th through 10th, 2022, when all 58,281 names on the wall will be read aloud. In the lead up to that event, we'll be reading names each day online while sharing the photos of these heroes. For our daily virtual reading, the names of the service members will be read by month and day of death between the years 1956 and 1975 in alphabetical order for the given day. We apologize in advance for any mispronunciations. Know that our readers are doing their best to honor these service members. We hope you'll listen and watch each day and share with others as we remember and honor those who gave their lives during the Vietnam War.
Robert William Abernathy, Terrence William Anker, Vincent Ackerson, Thomas B. Adams, Harold Lowell Allgard, Terry Ernest Allen, Kerry Charles Allen, Richard Graham Allen, Stephen Paul Alsted, Rudolfo Resta Allura, Stuart Merrill Andrews, Lionel S. Anthony, Rigaldo M.D. Herberito Armenta, Lester Robert Atherton, Alan Charles Bailey, Curtis Everett Baker, Isaiah Baker III, George L. Barber III, Jeffrey Clayton Barthol, Ernest Michael Beaucamp, Carrie Joseph Bell, Henry Bethia, Conrado Francis Biltuisia, Daniel Patrick Birch, Raymond Blanchett, Frank W. Bossong, Harmon Joseph Bowe, Jr., Michael Wayne Bowe, Prentice Barney Boykin, Jr., William Wesley Brown, David Kenneth Bruning, Robert Earl Buckley, Norman Joseph Buell, James Edward Bush, Ralph Lawrence Carlock, Alan Dale Carson, Rupert Sadler Carvin III, Arturo Alvarado Cobble, Leonard O'Neill Chandler, Mark Richardson Chase, John Merez Chavarria, Philip Henry Clark, Robert Nelson Clark, Jr., Richard Lee Claverie, James Stephen Cocheria, Michael Raymond Collins, John Francis Conlon III, Richard P. Corson, James Cronkron, Douglas Crowe, Dennis Michael Dougherty, James Richard Davidson, Bruce Davis, Thomas Glenn DeFoss, Adrian Leroy DeCamp, Stanley T. Demboski, Richard Lee Daimler, Sean Paul Dodson, Thomas Drum, Charles Clifford Dunn, John J. Edwards, Bernard John Fleming, Willie Frank Foster,
Daryl Allen Gallagher, Reuben Lewis Garnett, Jr., Michael Stephen Garrett, Ezra Gavin, Charlie Tidwell Gazaway, Michael David Gies, Michael Anthony Gilson, Ronald William Goddard, Harry M. Godwin, David Peter Goldsmith, Joseph Allen Goodson, Robert Joseph Gritt, Dwight Lee Hackworth, Gary Dodds Hall, Woodrow Wilson Ham, Jr., David Michael Hahn, John Merrill Hardin, Herbert Francis Hardy, Jr., Carl Clarence Harless, Andrew Lalone Hastings, Harry Philip Helt Jr., Edward Earl Henry, Richard J. Hentz, Klaus Jürgen Herms, Ramon Sanchez Hernandez, Joseph Samuel Heron, Barry Clinton Hyatt, Arthur Stanley Hill Jr., Robert John Hodel, Johnny Ray Holloway, Gary Olson Holsinger, Henry James Hooper, William John Hrinko, Richard Gray Hudson, Walter Vincent Hewlings, Philip Michael Hunt, Willie Hayward Hunter, George Robert Hutchinson, Israel Lonzo Ingram, Charlie Bernard Ingram Jr., Robert Eugene Jackson, John Paul Uroshik, Lawrence Everett Johnson, Richard Johnson, Charles Timothy Johnson, Russell Carl Johnson, William Johnson, Harvey Wayne Jones, Ronald Brynell Johnson, Robert Clayton Jordan, Laurie Cangro, Arnell Keys, Donnie Ramon Kidd, Louis Albert Kimmel Jr., Wilbur Glenn Kirchhoff, Robert W. Coivapalo Jr., Franz Josef Kolbeck, Roy Robert Lapiche, Robert Berg Lab, Edward Martin Lenz, Vernon Lee Looning, Daryl Gene Lewis, Jack Wayne Lindsay, Frank Lopez Jr.,
Alberto A. Lucero, Donald Richard Lumley, Lawrence Marion Lundby, Michael Wayne Marker, William Paul Mason, Robert Andrew McGill, Donnell Dean McMillan, Diego Mercado, Vinford Franklin Michael, Edward Walter Milan, Wilbur James Miller Jr., Larry Murdoch, Charles Edward Murray, Dennis Howard Mutz, William Clyde Northington, Patrick Francis O'Keefe, Henry Dwayne Odom, Samuel Geezy Orlando, Rodney D. Osborne, Frank Allen Oster, Charles Reuben Outlaw Jr., John Jackson Parker, James Allen Parker, Gary Converse Parkinson, Paul Gene Parsons, Vernon Franklin Pendergrass, Edmund A. Pacheco Jr., Robert Edwin Poe, Timothy Ernst Quigley, Clyde Edward Rains, Roberto Ramos Lopez, Terrell Lynn Randall, Benjamin Joseph Rawlings, Anthony Eric Reed, Frank Everett Reynolds, Joseph Ray Reynolds, Jackie Dean Reynolds, Ronald James Rhodes, Roberto Pena Rios, Jeremias Roman, Philip K. Ross, Ronald Patrick Russell, Camilo James Sanchez, Crescencio Paul Sanchez, Donald Barron Saunders, Peter Gary Scavuzzo, Victor Ray Sheeler, Timothy Richard Schroeder, Edward August Schultz, James Raymond Scott, Michael Anthony Shands, Frank Schartz Jr., James John Sherrick, Alan Craig Schroyer, Joseph Arthur Cylon Jr., Douglas Roy Sledge, Robert Leland Sloan, Alfred John Smith, Charles Leslie Smith, Robert Lee Smith, Jr., Ryuzo Soma, John Anthony Sorrenti, George Anthony Spence, Justin Richard Spisto,
James Mitchell Stanley, John Warner Stevens Jr., John Thomas Strawn, James Cecil Swan, Arvid Palmer Thormadsgar, Void Eugene Tidwell, Dwight Dwayne Tollefson, Michael Tolley, James Richard Tomlinson, Jose Enrique Torres, Delbert Leroy Trube Jr., Joe Nathan Tucker, Everett Jose Vallandigham, Angel Rudy Vasquez, Roscoe L. Vick, Charles David Wadsworth, Kenneth James Wagner, Robert Harvey Walker, David James Wartzock, Thomas Wardrop III, David Branyard Warren, Lester Arthur Wessigan, Charles Robert Wetzel, Frank David Wiley, Curtis Lee Williams, Brian Lyle Wilson, Richard Edward Winbigler, Roger Kimo Yamanaka, Michael Robert Young.